The entire village laughed when they saw the man standing at the altar. His clothes smelled of engine oil, his hands were dark with grease, and beside him stood a beautiful young woman whose eyes were filled with quiet pain. Someone in the crowd whispered loudly, "Is this really the man she's marrying?" Another person chuckled, "Chief Okoye must really hate that girl." The young woman lowered her head in shame. She had not chosen this man. She had been forced to marry him, a poor, dirty mechanic. But what no one in that church knew was that before the sun rose the next day, the truth about that mechanic would shock the entire town. Her name was Amara. She grew up in a small, struggling town where poverty was a part of everyday life. After her father died suddenly from an illness, life became much harder for her and her mother. The small shop her father once ran closed down, and the debts he left behind slowly piled up like dark clouds over their lives. Amara tried everything she could to support her mother. She sold fruits by the roadside, cleaned houses, and even worked late nights at a small restaurant in the town. But no matter how hard she tried, it never seemed to be enough. Debt collectors came often, knocking on their door with threats and warnings. Her mother grew weaker from the stress, and Amara began to feel trapped by circumstances she couldn't control. One afternoon, a powerful and wealthy businessman named Chief Okoye arrived at their small house. Everyone in town knew Chief Okoye. He owned large properties, businesses, and had influence over almost everything that happened in the area. When he entered their home, Amara felt a strange sense of fear. Chief Okoye sat down calmly and made an offer that sounded almost unbelievable. He told them he would pay off every single debt the family owed. The collectors would never bother them again. Amara's mother almost cried with relief. But then Chief Okoye revealed the condition attached to his offer. Amara had to marry a man he had chosen. The room suddenly went silent. Amara immediately refused. She didn't even know the man. How could she agree to marry someone she had never met? But Chief Okoye remained calm and reminded them of the consequences if they rejected his offer. Without his help, their debts would only grow worse. The threats would return, and their small home might even be taken from them. For days, Amara struggled with the decision. She barely slept. She knew agreeing would mean giving up control of her own life, but refusing might destroy her family completely. When she saw the fear and exhaustion in her mother's eyes, she finally made the painful decision. She would accept the marriage. Chief Okoye simply nodded when she told him. The wedding was arranged quickly, but one thing confused Amara. No one told her who the groom was. She assumed it must be someone wealthy, maybe a businessman connected to Chief Okoye. She told herself that maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't be so bad. The wedding day arrived faster than she expected. The church was decorated, and the hall was filled with guests curious about the mysterious arrangement. Amara walked slowly down the aisle in a simple white dress, her heart pounding. But when she finally looked up and saw the man standing at the altar waiting for her, her steps nearly stopped. The groom was Daniel, the town's mechanic. Everyone knew Daniel. He worked in a small garage near the market. His clothes were always stained with oil, his hands rough from fixing engines all day. He rarely spoke much and kept to himself. The moment the guests realized who the groom was, the church filled with murmurs and laughter. Some people shook their heads in disbelief. Others openly mocked the situation. Amara felt her face burn with humiliation. She wanted to turn around and run out of the church, but her mother squeezed her hand tightly, silently begging her not to cause a scene. The priest began the ceremony, and before Amara could fully process what was happening, the vows were spoken. In just a few minutes, she became Daniel's wife. After the ceremony, Daniel led her outside where an old, worn-out pickup truck waited. The engine coughed loudly when he started it, and the metal frame rattled as they drove away from the church. Amara stared silently out the window, fighting back tears. She felt like her entire future had been stolen from her. Daniel noticed the sadness in her face, but didn't say much at first. After a while, he spoke quietly. He told her he understood that this situation wasn't what she wanted and that he didn't blame her for feeling unhappy. His voice was calm and gentle, but Amara remained silent. She couldn't bring herself to look at him. They eventually arrived at a small house at the edge of town. It was modest, but neat. Daniel carried her small suitcase inside and showed her around the house. The living room was simple with a few basic pieces of furniture. The kitchen was clean but old-fashioned. Finally, he showed her the bedroom and told her she could rest while he stepped outside to finish something. Amara sat on the bed feeling completely overwhelmed. She thought about everything that had happened in the past few weeks and wondered how her life had changed so drastically. Later that evening, something strange happened. Amara was sitting quietly in the living room when Daniel's phone rang. The tone of his voice during the call immediately caught her attention. It sounded completely different from the quiet mechanic she had seen all day. He spoke confidently and professionally. He mentioned words like schedules, meetings, and approvals. At one point he said, "Yes, we'll finalize the board discussion tomorrow morning." Amara frowned. What kind of mechanic talks about board meetings? She tried to ignore the thought, telling herself she must have misunderstood. That night, while she was lying in bed, unable to sleep, she heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. It was not the sound of Daniel's old pickup truck. This engine was smooth and powerful. Curious, she quietly walked to the window and peeked outside. A sleek black luxury car had stopped in front of the house. Two men in expensive suits stepped out and walked toward the door. Daniel opened the door to greet them. Amara listened carefully from inside the hallway. One of the men spoke respectfully, calling him Mr. Daniel and handing him a folder filled with documents. The man told him that the board members were expecting him the next morning and that everything had been prepared. Daniel nodded calmly and thanked them. Amara's mind raced with confusion. Why were well-dressed businessmen visiting a mechanic late at night? The next morning, Daniel told her they were going somewhere. Amara assumed he meant the garage where he worked. Instead, he drove her out of town toward the city. After about 30 minutes, the pickup truck stopped in front of a massive modern building with glass walls that reflected the sunlight. The company name was written boldly across the top of the structure. Security guards at the entrance immediately opened the gate when they saw Daniel. They greeted him respectfully as if they had been waiting for him. Amara looked around in confusion as they entered the building. Inside, employees walking through the lobby straightened up when they saw Daniel. Some greeted him politely, calling him "Sir." The receptionist stood up quickly and welcomed him back as if he were someone extremely important. Daniel noticed Amara's shocked expression and gently asked her to follow him to a private office on the top floor. The office was enormous, with large windows overlooking the city skyline. Amara stood silently in the center of the room, trying to understand what was happening. Daniel finally turned toward her and took a deep breath. He told her it was time she knew the truth. Years earlier, his father had built one of the largest automobile manufacturing companies in the country. When his father passed away, Daniel inherited the entire company and became its CEO. But instead of living the flashy life people expected from someone with that level of wealth, Daniel made a surprising decision. He chose to live quietly and work as a mechanic in a small town. He wanted to experience life without the influence of money and status. He wanted to understand how people truly treated others when wealth was not visible. Daniel explained that Chief Okoye had known his father and was aware of his secret life. When Chief Okoye saw how kind and hard-working Amara was despite her struggles, he believed she was the kind of person Daniel had been hoping to meet. That was why the marriage had been arranged the way it was. Daniel looked at Amara sincerely and told her that he had never wanted someone who loved him for his money. He wanted someone who understood struggle and valued people for who they truly were. Amara stood there speechless. The man she believed was a poor mechanic was actually a billionaire businessman. Within days, the truth began spreading through the town. The same people who had laughed at the wedding were now shocked and embarrassed. They realized the mechanic they mocked actually owned one of the most powerful companies in the region. Suddenly, everyone wanted to show respect. People who had ignored Daniel before now greeted him warmly whenever they saw him. But Daniel never seemed interested in their sudden change of attitude. He continued to behave the same way he always had, humble and calm. One evening, while they were sitting together watching the sunset, Amara asked him a question that had been on her mind since she discovered the truth. She asked him why he chose to continue the marriage after seeing how unhappy she had been on their wedding day. Daniel smiled softly before answering. He told her that during the ceremony, when everyone in the church was laughing at him, she was the only one who didn't join them. Even though she was embarrassed and hurt, she still treated him with basic kindness. That small moment showed him everything he needed to know about her character. He told her that money could buy many things in life, but it could never buy a genuine heart. Amara looked at him differently after that conversation. For the first time since the wedding, she realized that the life she thought had been taken from her might actually lead to something far better than she had ever imagined.